I want to be very clear about what I said. Nobody called for the invasion of Pakistan. Senator McCain continues to repeat this. What I said was the same thing that the audience here today heard me say, which is if Pakistan is unable or unwilling to hunt down bin Laden and take him out, then we should. Now, that I think has to be our policy because they are threatening to kill more Americans.
My opponent and his running mate are new to foreign policy. But from all that we've seen and heard, they want to take us back to an era of blustering and blundering that cost America so dearly.
Blustering and blundering. What a prediction of today's events. Then we're back with the president, and as he accepted his party's nomination last week, he seemed to be predicting this week. We've never been more true than today. And Secretary of State Clinton denouncing the attack on the Americans in Libya exemplified the administration's foreign policy strength.
This is an attack that should shock the conscience of people of all faiths around the world. This was an attack by a small and savage group, not the people or government of Libya. But let me be clear, there is no justification for this. None. Violence like this is no way to honor religion or faith.
Foreign policy has been an afterthought in this election so far, but suddenly in one day it has emerged as a potentially major issue that's likely to help the president. Eugene Robinson is a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Washington Post, and David Corney is Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones Magazine. Both are MSNBC political analysts. Let's talk about news development here. You're an editor of long-standing. This story now looks like it's going to get top placement everywhere in the papers tomorrow. This is a big one. The fumbling, the bumbling, I called it, by Romney.
Yeah, I mean, the big headline, obviously, is what happened, is the atrocity in Libya, the riots in Cairo, who was behind the thing in Libya. The sidebar right next to it, right there below, is about Romney and this sort of, shoot from the lip approach, which, and the questions of judgment and character that it raises, frankly. I mean, in domestic policy, you talk about stuff you don't know anything about, you make an ass of yourself. In foreign policy, you start a war if you do that. I mean, it's very serious. So the judgment question, and then the character question. I mean, at a moment like that, when you don't know what's going on, America is under attack. We are supposed to be all Americans.
This is more Newt Gingrich than this is the kind of Newt Gingrich used to do this all the time. Anything would happen, he'd jump and say, "Hey, I can blame the CIA for being underfunded." Immediately, the brain goes to, "How can I attack the gut?"
The Democrats. This is a have you no decency moment, I think, because Mitt Romney went out there, and we all talk about the campaign and how can people let him do this. These words passed through his lips not once, but twice. And he's not a dumb guy. He had to know what he was doing, and as he noted earlier, he had to know that the stuff wasn't true. Yet he said it anyway.
But that's the new parlance, isn't it? The new rules of engagement are, even if you know something about Medicare isn't true, even if you know something about work and welfare aren't true, you just keep saying it.
But there's something particularly foul about this instance. We have the death of this heroic ambassador that Mitt Romney is now trying to exploit in some ways, and he's accusing the president, who he's accused of being an appeaser and an apologizer, like killing bin Laden wasn't good enough for him. And at this moment in time, this is all that narrative that plays to the crazy right. And you have to think, wait a second, most of the voters that he needs to get now, the independents, the undecided in the middle, they probably do not think that Obama, who got bin Laden, is an appeaser or apologizer.
But let's use the word. Just a minute. They use the word sympathizer. He's not appeasing the enemy. He's with them.
Which is even worse now. Now they're accusing him of being a traitor, and this only plays to the far right. He can't get out of this mode of placating.
I raised this little fight with the chairman of the RNC a couple weeks ago, and I believe that he's like this. The rest of them, they just casually now accuse the president of being someone or the other. He's out there sympathizing with our enemies. The word sympathy, what is that about?
It's about what you said. I mean,
he's on the other side.
It's not hard to read into that an accusation of treason. There's more than a whiff of desperation about it, to tell you the truth, though. I mean, if it's not out of desperation, which is at least a logical motive, then it's really dangerous. I mean, he must have known what he was doing, and he must have made some sort of calculation articulation to do it. If he didn't and just kind of blundered out there with this, that worries me about somebody.
Actually, no, look, I think this country's tired of wars. Look, we've still got two going on with women over there facing death every day over there in Afghanistan, Iraq. There's talk of we've been behind the scenes in Libya. We're behind the scenes perhaps in Syria. We may get into a war with Iran. Nobody wants a new war right now.
Right.
But also there's a sense, although they don't want a new war, they don't want to think that we're not fighting as best we can the wars we're involved in, like fighting terrorism. So what do you do now is you put out the word, well, the president's not only fighting the war not hard enough, he's sympathizing with the enemy.
Well, I've
never seen this kind of attack on a president.
They've called him an amateur.
Sympathizing with the Viet Cong. Nobody ever did that.
They've called him weak and amateur, and that America's under threat because of him, and now accusing him of being in league with people who are killing Americans. I think you're right. It's a new low. Who thought they could go lower? But it's also showing this is just one in a series of blunders. He made the mistake at the Olympics. He made the mistake with the Chinese dissidents. He made the mistake by not mentioning the troops. This guy just doesn't know.
I think there's a little more form to it than just stupidity, don't you think? Gene, I get the feeling that part of it is the neocon thing of we're always against the world, Israel's against the world, we got to fight, and everything has to be an east-west fight to the death. Right, and we want to stir it up a little ourselves. It doesn't hurt.
There's a smart, informed neocon argument, and there's what Romney's doing.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, they're not the same thing.
Okay, he's not quite on the script. Anyway, the New York Times great reporter David Sanger wrote about the influences on Romney's foreign policy choices and found he doesn't really have a North Star. Quote, what has struck both his advisors and outside Republicans is that in his effort to secure the nomination, Mr. Romney's public comments have usually rejected mainstream Republican orthodoxy. They sound more like the talking points of the neoconservatives, the Bolton facts, that's John Bolton, the former UN ambassador, as insiders call the group led by John Bolton. Now this is an interesting thing. There are hardliners who are always hardliners. Let's go to war, push China around, let's go to war with Russia again, let's go to war with Iran. And there he is, what do we do with Libya? And what are we doing with these horrible situations of a mob attack? Do we attack the mob? Do we start gunning them down?
Well, this is why it's empty rhetoric. He just talks about about Obama not being tough, and we need to be tough, but he doesn't say what that entails. As if getting Gaddafi out of power was not being tough. As if getting rid of 20, 30 Al-Qaeda leaders is not being tough. So it's just, I think it's just buzzwords to get people who are predisposed to think that Obama, because he's a Democrat, because he's something else, is not really on the side of America.
Let's talk foreign policy. Because this gets to I want to do in this segment. You pick a president, so you pick a number of people to put a number of hats on. You're head of the government, head of the administration, the executive branch. You're leader of your political party. You're also chief of staff of the government. Basically, you're the chief of state.
Right.
Right.
You are the people. You're also the head of state. You're the person who represents the American people. Which one of those hats is Romney ready for? I mean, I'm not sure anyone
Maybe none.
I'm not sure you could argue that he's ready to be our commander-in-chief in the world. He doesn't even have the propensity to understand what these words mean when he speaks them.
Yeah.
Well, he hasn't given us evidence that he does. I mean, we haven't seen.
Does he know what it means to get tough with another country? A metaphor? What that means?
It sounds like a campaign rhetoric that's intended to increase his chances of getting elected without regard for the ramifications of what he is saying.
Does he mean fire on the mob? Fire. Imagine this, we start firing on the Libyan mob.
Look at it this way.
Great idea.
Have you heard him in the course of this campaign say anything that was interesting about foreign policy?
I don't think he's interested
that made you think, hey, whether I agree or not, he thinks about this in a certain way? The answer is no.
I have never thought his interest went beyond, and this is fair, his faith, his family, his business. And currently his business is running for president. He has no curiosity about the world. He hasn't thought about Libya. He hasn't thought about Syria in his life. Anyway, thank you, Gene Robinson, and thank you, David Corn.